Good evening and welcome. It's this month's Facebook Live event. I'm James Sweetman. I can't believe it's 5 weeks since the last event back on in early January, where the topic was moving beyond New Year's resolutions. Tonight's topic is all about uh, self-confidence. It's a topic, it's a theme that runs close to a lot of the work that I do. And sometimes we might use different words and different phrases around it, whether it's confidence, whether it's resilience, whether it's empowerment, whether it's overcoming lack of self-confidence. But it's one of those ideas or concepts or emotions that we all can identify with, because let's face it, most of us in at least some situations would like to feel more confident or more empowered or more assertive. And tonight I'm going to share 7 strategies with you. You know, there are many more, but as ever on an evening like this, I want to keep it tight and condensed, and maybe, 25 minutes or so in duration. As ever with this Facebook Live event, it comes alive when people are kind enough to give me a thumbs up, or make a comment or ask a question. And of course, if you think that you know of anyone within your own circle who might benefit from some of the advice or insights that I'm sharing, by all means tag them and share this. And of course, you can look back at the recording afterwards as well. So as I say, I can't believe it's 5 weeks since the last one. That's even with January seeming like a long month. You know, the way sometimes January can feel like it has 70 days in it, let alone, 31. So tonight's topic, as I say, is about boosting self-confidence. And with anything, I think if we're looking for more of anything, whatever it is, it's always good to start off by contemplating what exactly is it? What exactly is self-confidence? I see a few people joining. Mary is there, Brian is there, Crystal is there. Crystal, I hope that 14-day challenge is elongating. Of course, a number of you joining tonight would have been at my flagship event, SOAR, in the Westbury back in almost a month ago now. In the middle of January. For those of you who were there or who would like to find out more about it, on my website and indeed on my Facebook news feed, you'll see the video highlights of January's event. But I'm sort of a person who keeps looking forward, and that was last month, and tonight is about self-confidence and sharing 7 practical tips that you can apply. So as I was saying, if we're looking for more of anything, it is about getting clear as to what that is or what that means to us. And as I say, with self-confidence, sometimes we can use different words with it, but we do sort of know what it feels like because it is an emotion. I see Bernie is here, and she's saying hi. Bernie, thank you, and thank you for your message earlier as well. So, as I was saying, what is self-confidence? Well, there's a definition of it that sometimes I bandy about. It's a slightly more official or dictionary type of definition of self-confidence. It's an internal faith or belief or certainty about our personal powers and our abilities to achieve. So it's like our faith in ourselves. And I often think what other people see is maybe appropriate assertiveness, but what we feel is self-confidence. And that word faith is interesting because I think it goes back to the root of the word confidence itself, from the Latin con, meaning with, and fidus, meaning faith, with faith, and self-confidence with faith in self. I see Crystal has a note. A 14-day challenge is a challenge for sure, but it's going well. Life is transforming in a positive direction. Terrific. I might speak more about 14-day challenges at the end. In fact, I probably will. So the simple way of looking at self-confidence from a pure word perspective, and those of you who know me know I like words and play on words, but the definition of self-confidence can feed us with faith in self. And what I found interesting over the years of working with people in this area, whether it's on interview skills coaching, whether it's enhancing someone's presentation skills, whether it's just someone looking to be more impactful at work or working on improving a relationship or communication skills, whatever it is. I need these on to read the comments. One of the things that it often goes to the heart of it is that it's not about increasing the confidence bit per se. It's rebalancing it and bringing myself back into the definition of self-confidence. Because one of the things I find when we feel or we perceive that we're lacking in self-confidence, we've probably drifted into the territory of giving more credence, more time and attention to other people or what other people might be thinking about us, which is guesswork most of the time. And we've sort of lost the self in it. You know, it's the same self that sits in self-confidence that sits in like myself or self-awareness, and even say a little bit of selfishness too. But I'll touch on that again later as well. So oftentimes in this area, it is about putting ourselves back into what it is we want. You know, what do I want to achieve here? It's like putting the self back into self-confidence. That would be the first distinction I would share. Sometimes there's other ways of looking at this whole balancing act with self-confidence. Sometimes we use different words with it. One of my favorite phrases in this area is viewing it as rebalancing the relationship between honesty and modesty. You know, because let's face it, it's nice to be modest and humble and, you know, to demonstrate humility and for other people to be speaking about us in a certain way. But oftentimes we're probably more modest than we are honest, because being honest is about owning the things we do well and honest about sharing what it is we want and just being as honest as we are modest. You know, it's another way of looking at it. But anyway, enough of all of that. Let me get into the 7 strategies that I want to share with you tonight. And some of them are about raising awareness in certain areas and maybe doing more of something. But as often is the case, it's also about doing less of something as well. And that's where the contrast of life comes from, more of something, less of something else. But the first strategy I want to share with you, again, goes back to what do we mean when we're talking about confidence? Let me give you an analogy here. You know, say if you're about to embark on something for the first time, and say probably most of us tuned in tonight are car drivers. You know, we know how to drive a car. If you think back to the first time you were getting in to drive a car, is it reasonable to think that you would have been confident? And the answer to that would be no. You know, and it's probably dangerous to be confident getting into a car if you've never driven one before, joyriding and whatever else. What is the quality that gets us to do something that we've not done before, or to do something that we're a little bit nervous or anxious about? The quality is not confidence. The quality is courage. You know, the courage to give something a go. And when I find myself in my own personal life, or with people that I work with, oftentimes we think we're looking for confidence, but we're not really. We're really looking for to tap into those reserves of courage that we have. And courage from the Latin, I've done confidence from the Latin confidus, meaning with faith. Courage from the word cur, meaning heart, you know, cur in French or corazon in Spanish. You know, I'm putting my heart into it a little more. And courage is what gets us to try something, and confidence is what we earn at the other side. You know, think of the analogy of driving the car again. You know, I'm courageous to give it a go. I've given it a go and I've survived it. And then at the other side, we get confidence as the reward, and that's how we build it. So sometimes it's not about confidence at all, it's about courage. And maybe courage is more accessible for us than this big idea of confidence anyway. Also, sometimes when we're looking for more confidence, or we think we are, we're actually looking for another C word, you know, and that C word is calmness. There are some situations where I would like to feel a little calmer. You know, and some of the feedback I get, say if I've worked with someone on interview skills or presentation skills, and they might send me an email or phone call afterwards, and they'll say, James, don't take this the wrong way, but when I was doing that presentation last week, I was just getting on with it. You know, oftentimes when we think we're lacking in confidence, it's about removing that negative charge, that feeling, and getting it somewhere back to neutral or normality, you know, because half the time we don't think about stuff in this area. It's like, I just get on with it. It's a bit like doing my shopping in Tesco. I'm not thinking of how confident I feel, I'm just doing it. Bernadette is saying, very useful insights, nervous about giving my first keynote lecture in a few months' time. No problem to you. It was interesting. I had a fairly big talk today, and I suppose I'm fortunate that I do a lot of speaking, and it's something that I really enjoy doing. But I was in the National Concert Hall this morning, so it's like I'm hitting out of these big venues around Dublin in the last 12 months or so. There's been Croke Park, the Convention Centre, Guinness Hop Store. I'm trying to think of the other bigger venues. The RDS. This morning it was the National Concert Hall, and I certainly wasn't singing opera from the stage. I was doing a breakfast seminar on personal branding. And there was about 130 people in the room. And I still need to manage my own confidence levels at something like that. You know, particularly that early in the morning. I was on the stage at 8 a.m., which makes this a long day. Ironic, considering I also do work-life balance. But I could feel my heart going a little bit, which means that I care. You know, I'm emotionally involved. If we weren't a little bit nervous or anxious, which is something to bear in mind, Bernie, that, you know, I'm not maybe, I could be complacent, you know, if I'm not emotionally involved in it. But we obviously want to harness that. And the brain's always going to be thinking certain thoughts. So I always think, particularly in that context, it's about being very clear as to what your intention is. And my intention for speaking with a group this morning, you know, was to focus on them, not on me, because oftentimes, particularly in the context of presenting or even at an interview, we get very caught up in ourselves. It's like, oh my God, I'm feeling so nervous, or oh my God, I don't want to feel this way or that way. But it's usually not that much about us, particularly with a presentation. It's about delivering a message to an audience for a purpose, or it's about communicating a message to interviewers if it's in that context. It's a bit like, let's get over ourselves here once this issue is not pervasive. So where was I? Yeah, sometimes it's courage we're looking for more of. Sometimes it's calmness. Yeah, and I'll share a tip with you shortly about accessing or connecting with that sense of calmness. So remember, with confidence, as I say, it's often, it's a bit like happiness. You know, it's too big a concept. What is more achievable? What maybe is a bridge to it? Confidence and calmness are two that work for me, and they've worked with clients that I've shared it with as well. So that's strategy one. Maybe it's not confidence, maybe courage and calmness are more accessible. Strategy two is being aware that if you perceive you're lacking in confidence in any particular scenario, you have to know what confidence is to know you're lacking it. Like, just think about that for a minute. It's like, I have to be aware of the sensations in my body or the thought patterns that go with it. And I'm looking for something different because I have a benchmark to compare it to. I want to feel more that way as opposed to this way. So therefore, within our memory banks, you know, and our brains are a bit like the warehouse, they store all our memories, usually the ones with the heightened emotional charges attached to them. But I have reference points for what confidence is. I have to have it, otherwise I wouldn't know when I'm not there. So one of the things that I always do, if I'm looking to feel more empowered or more assertive or more courageous or more confident in the present moment, I'll have a think about times in the past when I did feel that way. Maybe it's in a different context. I'll re-experience it. I'll imagine that I'm putting in the DVD of this old memory of when I did that successfully before, or when I felt a certain way. Let me see it, let me hear it, let me re-experience it. And let me breathe in and feel the sensations on the inside, because emotionally that's all that's going on. There's a certain sensation in the body, and I'll speak more about that in a minute as well. So let me think about what's known as empowered memories, those moments in the past when I can use those memories as a time to access the qualities I want to experience in the present moment. And oftentimes that balances out a tendency that we have to worry, and that might be another Facebook Live topic down the road. So strategy two, empowered memories. Let me think about times in the past when I connected with the quality that I want to have in the present moment. Strategy number three brings us back into sensations. You know, so for most of us, when we think about when we are lacking in self-confidence and we think about the physical sensations in the body, it might be butterflies in the stomach, it might be shaky hands, it might be all of those things that we do instinctively when the fight or flight button is pressed. And oftentimes I say that fight or flight response, that defense mechanism response, is our body working perfectly. The challenge is that sometimes we press that fight or flight button when maybe we don't have to. Now that's a topic that could take up an entire day, let alone 5 minutes on this, so I won't delve into that any further. But if we think about one of the, perhaps the first early warning signals of a lack of confidence or anxiousness in the body, it's our breathing patterns. We will breathe high and fast. You know, your breath feels caught up here and it's quite shallow and fast. So a great technique, and it's one that I use myself fairly frequently, is to breathe a little bit more purposefully. It's great when you're in scenarios where you're looking to speak, you know, as a presenter or doing an interview or at a meeting, or anytime you really just want to connect more with yourself. Because think about all of those, how would you say it? You know, practices like yoga, mindfulness, Pilates, martial arts. It's all based on managing the breath. And we breathe anyway, touch wood, but sometimes we can breathe a bit more purposefully. So a great little tip that I use, and it's one of the simplest forms of more conscious breathing, is a two-staged in breath. So I take a breath in, hold, another little breath in, and then exhale. That second in breath forces me to use the lower part of my lungs. And what I tend to do is to associate that second in breath with a quality that I want to connect with more purposely. It's like this is a way for me to resource myself now. And breathing, what it also does is bring our attention out of a busy head back into our bodies, and back into the present moment, the only place where we have control. So that's another strategy to be aware of. I'm going to be breathing anyway. Let me breathe more purposefully. And think about it for a minute. Like, our body has that wisdom anyway. It's like, take a deep breath and off you go. The way you might say that to yourself, or someone else might say it to you. So want to do a quick shout out to all of you who've joined me tonight. I really appreciate that, and for the thumbs up and for the comments, and I hope you're finding this useful. Again, tonight's all about sharing some practical tips for boosting self-confidence, something that a lot of us can relate to in most scenarios. And I think it's part of being human. I think if it wasn't there, we could all be raving, arrogant, narcissistic, egotistical maniacs. It sort of does keep us human. It's also part of being vulnerable and real and relatable and empathetic. I often find when I'm working with people who, and let's face it, a lot of us are caring, empathetic, great at rapport, great at social skills. The flip side of that is that we have a tendency to take things personally. It's like our social connectors are open, so we're able to give and relate outwards, but it also means that we're fully open like sponges to take in stuff from the other side. And sometimes we just need to manage ourselves a little bit more in that area. Maureen is on. Hi, James, enjoying the topic. Great. As you can probably tell, it's a topic that I'm quite passionate about myself, and it's one that I keep honing and fine-tuning. And about, close to 18 months ago now, I think it is, I did a 2.5-hour masterclass on this topic, and I'll stick a link up to that in the comment section after this, where there's a whole wad of resources available on this broad topic of self-confidence. So anyway, three tips down, 4 to go. So the first one, just to recap for those of you who've just joined, if we're looking at confidence, maybe it's not confidence at all we're after. It's a greater sense of courage, or it's a greater sense of calmness. It's also about realizing that if I feel I'm lacking in confidence now, I have to know what confidence is, so I can use memories from the past as a way of accessing the quality of the emotion I want to experience now in the present. And then what I've just spoken about is paying attention to our breathing patterns, paying attention to the sensations in the body. And if we think of what emotions are, or how I label them, it's sticking a story onto sensations in the body. So it's a bit like, my heart's beating fast, or my breath is high in my chest. Oh, the story is I'm about to do this. Clunk, click, the two together go, I'm lacking confidence, or I'm feeling nervous. And sometimes it's about pulling that apart, breaking it down, dividing and conquering, etc. So they were the first 3. The next few are about doing less of something, because oftentimes, we'll be getting our own way, a bit less of something. And by doing less of something, my self-confidence will naturally bubble up. The first thing that we can do less of is what I would say is make sure you're staying in your own lane. And what do I mean by that? It's like, let's pull out or do less comparison stuff. The way so often we'll put other people on a pedestal. We'll say, gosh, I wish I could do that like them. I wish I could be like them, but that's never valid. The only comparison that's ever valid is between where you feel you are now and where you feel you could be on a certain topic. That's what staying in your lane is all about. Michael, thank you for your comment. This is useful. Great. I appreciate that. The flip side of that, of course, can be that we can learn from others. So if you see someone doing something in a way you'd like to be able to do it, can you, what would be known as model success, can you replicate for you how they're approaching it? Or can you actually maybe have a conversation with them and say, what advice could you pass on? When we do that in an appropriate way, people are often happy to share their advice. It's like, gosh, how can you rock and roll up there and do that? And you seem so whatever. Maybe I'll get a few gems of wisdom from that. But comparing yourself to someone else really is putting the boot into yourself, and it doesn't really serve any practical purposes at all. Second one, strategy number 5, something else to just be conscious of. And I'm not sure if this is a really Irish thing, but we tend to do it. You know, the way we brush off compliments. You know, someone might say to you, oh, that's a lovely shirt, or, you know, that's a lovely handbag, or did you get your hair done? And sometimes we look for the hidden agenda behind it. But the way I view compliments is see it as, you know, a gift someone is giving you, a little wrapped gift. And, you know, if you didn't take the gift from them, if that was a real gift, you'd sort of be considered rude, you know. And we're all alert enough to know if someone's giving you a backhanded compliment or if they're really sort of, you know, putting a dig in. But most compliments, when we pay attention to them, are genuinely meant. And let me take them and let me see them as a building block of self-confidence in a way that's just more open and honest, let's say. One of the other things to bear in mind with that piece of feedback, remember I was speaking about our social connectors being open and a tendency to take things personally. What I find fascinating is that if someone could give us the slightest, you know, perceived slight or dig or backhanded compliment or whatever, and we'll take those gifts for sure. You know, James, I didn't like the way you approached that. And it's like, oh, I'll take that from them, you know, and somehow I'll take that more easily than if it was an actual genuine compliment, which somehow we feel uncomfortable with. And that's an interesting one, but that's something just to pay attention to. And I've often found when we pay attention to compliments, there's more of them out there than we think. And maybe I'm not sufficiently open to receiving them. You know, I'm a great believer in balance. Everything in the world is yin and yang, give and take, up and down, black and white, hot and cold, etc., etc. And that's also true in terms of interrelationships, relationships with people. You know, we'll often be quite happy to give out compliments and to give out encouragement and to give out positive feedback, but somehow we're maybe a little bit more reluctant to receive it. So it is only about that balancing act again, back to that balance between honesty and modesty. Yeah. So again, thank you for joining and thank you for the comments and for the thumbs up and everything. I have to stay on track. I have a few little notes down here to ensure I don't wander off topic too much. So what one are we on? We did impaired memories, courage and calmness, breathing, staying in our own lane, accepting compliments. Number 6, 2 more to go. This one is quite a subtle one, but it's a very powerful one. We will all have habits in terms of how we self-identify and habits about how we speak about ourselves. And so often we will put ourselves down. Like we'll be the first person to put ourselves down. And I think our unconscious pattern behind that is, well, if I do it, at least I'm in control of it. And I've done it first, and therefore I can do it before anyone else can do it. It's almost like I'm chopping off my own limbs to lower myself for fear that someone else will come in and chop me down to size. Again, I don't know if it's an Irish thing or not, but I'm a great believer in the concept of and the habit of how we speak about ourselves and how we self-identify. It's interesting. I don't know how I managed to plan this, but I have another breakfast seminar in tomorrow morning, another 5:30 start. And tomorrow morning's topic is about high performance, and it's with one of the modern IT companies, one of those companies who do high performance already, which I find interesting. But I'm doing an hour with them on high performance. And one of the things I'm sharing with them, not dissimilar to this, is if you're going to enhance your performance at work, you have to see yourself or believe or know, or at least think that you're someone who is capable of that. You know, it's a bit like anything. You know, if you look around you in the room that you're in, even if you look at these AirPods that I have in my ears for the microphone, they just didn't appear. You know, they started off in someone's mind. And that is true of if I'm looking to enhance performance or if I'm looking to boost self-confidence. I have to picture what that might look like in my mind. Because if I can't, it ain't just going to happen, you know. It's a bit like the chair you're sitting on, maybe. You know, it was designed before it was manufactured. So it started off in someone's head. Anyway, so let's be careful of how we speak about ourselves. And for me, that's often what follows the 2 words I am. You know, the way you might say, I am useless at this. I am struggling with that. I'm lacking in confidence. I'm nervous. You know, there is a part of acknowledging how you're feeling, for sure, that is important. But let me not get hung up on labels here, because oftentimes those labels will block our progression. You know, a little while ago, and sometimes I tell this story to other groups, when I'm working with them on this topic. And I remember doing a half-day workshop on interview skills coaching with the group. And that's not something I do that often because most interview skills prep is individual. But we did an hour or so on overcoming interview nerves. And people were leaving the workshop and they're saying, James, that was useful. I got a lot from it. And I was saying, thank you. And one lady was going out the door and she said, James, that's great. But she said, I have my interview next week and I know I'll go to pieces. And we'd only spoken about confidence. You know, she said, I know I'll go to pieces. And I said to her, I know you will too. And Mike was like, gosh, why did you say that, James? Well, I said it to her to jolt her out of that habit of thinking, because we will conform to how we view ourselves. You know, I am, so therefore I do. Yeah. And you've often heard me say it before, we're human beings, we're not human doings. And sometimes the label we place on ourselves is part of the block. So there's a quote I came across only today, which I thought was a really good one, and it's really only sitting with me, but I thought I'd share it with you tonight because it's relevant to this topic. It's like, you know, it is not what you are that is holding you back. It is what you think you are not. I need to share that one again. I'm only getting it off the tip of my tongue. You know, it is not what you are that is holding you back. It is what you think you are not. So if I think I'm not self-confident, that is part of the problem. And for years I've been saying to people that I work with in this area, it's like, what if you had all the confidence you need, but you only think you don't? That's an interesting one to ponder on a Tuesday evening. You know, what if you've all the confidence you need, but you only think you don't? And maybe it's not confidence anyway, as I say, it's only courage or calmness. And we can get calmer by breathing. You know, you can do it there, that 2-stage in breath. As I often say, don't believe all your thoughts. I mean, there's loads of thoughts that go on up here. Don't believe them all. In the same way as if you're watching a movie on the television, you know, a slasher movie or a horror movie, you know, and you're looking at it and you're invested in it and the doorbell goes and you jump, you know, that movie is a movie, like it's not real, but you're responding to it. And that's often the case with a lot of our habitual thoughts as well. So as I move towards close, let me recap on the 6 strategies I've shared with you so far about boosting self-confidence. The first one is about, you know, realizing that maybe it's not confidence, maybe it's courage, maybe it's calmness, and they're qualities that are maybe more accessible to me in the short term. And confidence is what I can earn when I try something that's outside of my comfort zone. Second strategy is about empowered memories. So I have to know what confidence is to know that I'm lacking it. So I can use those reference memories as a way to reconnect with the quality I want to connect with now in the present moment. Third one is about being more conscious around my breathing, you know, so I'm going to be breathing anyway. Sometimes when I'm nervous and anxious, it's high and fast. So let me breathe more purposely. And the 2-staged in breath I find works for me because I'm purposely trying out a different habit. It's like, feels good already. Then there's a few bits about doing less of. So do less of comparing yourself to others because it serves no purpose. It puts the boot in. The only comparison that's valid is between where you feel you are now and where you think you could be. Another one then is about don't brush off the compliments, you know, let the compliments in, just pay attention to them. I came across someone recently and they said, James, you know, when you shared that advice with me latter end of last year, she started to record a confidence journal. Now, for those of you who know me, it's like we might have a gratitude journal or a gratitude jar, a joy jar, and also we can have a compliments notebook. Let me note the compliments that I hear people passing my way. You know, just in an honest and open to receiving way. Then there is the piece about how we talk about ourselves, and let's just be conscious of what follows the phrase I am, because we will conform to it. Last piece, touched on it already, is when we're looking to progress any soft skill, any emotion, any quality that we want to experience more of. It's not a black and white scenario. You know, this stuff is not like going off to learn Excel where you can click and drag a cell. You don't have to type in a formula. This stuff is all different shades of grey, you know, 50 shades of grey almost. And it is about progression in a direction. I mentioned there to Crystal, who tuned in earlier, who attended my event in the Westbury, and at the end of that this year, I sort of invited people to participate in a 14-day challenge or a 14-day commitment to themselves. Because if I'm looking for change, it's like if I think about this forever and ever, it's way too big. And if we chunk it down, into 7 days, 14 days even, I give myself a target of 2 weeks to maybe approach something differently. So if I'm looking to boost my levels of self-confidence, I might sort of think over the next 2 weeks, right? What do I have scheduled? Am I due to go out? Am I due to, attend something? Am I due to go to an important meeting or whatever? And I'm thinking of a specific scenario where I would like to show up in a different way. And I would like to maybe connect with a certain quality or an emotion. Maybe it's confidence, maybe it's courage, maybe it's assertiveness, maybe it's empowerment, whatever phrase I put on it. And let me visualize how I could show up. I love the question about who do I want to be in this situation. So if I know I have something coming up and I want to approach it differently, let me think about who do I want to be in that scenario. So what I'm doing is utilizing what's often associated with sports people, which is the power of visualization. And if we think about it, if we're lacking in confidence, we're visualizing anyway, but we're visualizing the worst case scenario. Let me for a moment think about, well, what might be a better case scenario, or how can I show up in a different way here? Because if I don't contemplate it first, it's very difficult to follow through on it. That's true of anything that exists around you. I can see a kettle over there. That didn't just appear. It was designed in someone's head to start with. So maybe between now and the end of February, I can set myself a little 14-day challenge around applying 1 or 2 of these strategies that I've shared with you this evening as a way of progressing, with your own personal development. And as I often say, personal development is personal. That's why it's labeled such. So let me do a quick recap again. Confidence from the Latin confidus, with faith, but oftentimes it's not about the with faith bit, it's the self bit. I'm bringing myself higher on my own agenda almost. The strategies are maybe connecting with courage and calmness as something that's more accessible in the short term, using memories, times in the past where I did feel confident, as a way to reconnect with that emotion now in the present moment. Paying attention to my breathing, that 2-staged in-breath. I'm breathing anyway, let me do it a bit more purposefully. Let me stay in my own lane, let me not compare myself to others too much because it's not valid. Let me accept those compliments, those little gifts, those little building blocks or stepping stones in self-confidence that are available to me if I'm open to receiving them. And of course, sometimes the way to stimulate compliments is to give some genuine compliments as well. I often think if we're giving them away, it's part of abundance, and it makes someone else's lives better as well. Then be careful about how we self-identify and how we speak about ourselves. If this is an area that you're working on, you can say that, well, I'm James and I'm working on boosting my assertiveness, or I'm working on boosting self-confidence. That's far more beneficial than sort of labeling it as, I'm no good at this, because you will conform to it. And then can you set yourself a little goal or a little target? And I'll finish again with that little quote that only came across the day, which I thought was so timely. It's not what you think you are that is, it's not what you are that is holding you back. It is what you think you are not. That is a deep one for a Tuesday. I mentioned earlier that about 18 months or so ago, I did a confidence masterclass. It's available on the website Tilleo, TILLEO.com. It's a 2.5-hour long masterclass that was video produced, very plushly produced with Tilleo, the online educator. I think the course normally retails at $49.99, but they have it at the moment for $39.99. And as I say, it's about 2.5 hours long, and you can chunk it down and you can look at it in different segments. As ever, it's been a pleasure having this interaction with you tonight. Thank you for everyone who joined, and for your little thumbs up and your likes and your comments. I appreciate that. Not too many questions tonight. I probably didn't give you a chance, but on a topic like this, I do like to give as much insight and as many distinctions as possible. The next event will be in March. If you have a particular topic that you'd love me to address, stick that into the comments as well. Kaz is up. Thanks, James. Enjoyed the video. We'll join again. The notifications are switched to on. Great. and as I say, I'll put this video up on the page, and if you know of anyone who might benefit from it, by all means share it to them. It's up there, it's a free resource. Thank you, Mary, for the tips. You were the first one on. I appreciate that. As I say, it's a topic that I'm very much interested in, and if you go onto my website as well, jamessweetman.com, there's many different slants on this topic of self-confidence. There's many different ways of viewing it. So I've gone over half an hour. I always aim for about 25 minutes on these sessions. As I say, it's been a long day for me, and it's an early start again tomorrow. Maybe next month the topic should be work-life balance. On that note, I'll sign off, and until next time.